I'm not proud of this, but I'm not here to be forgiven. I just need to say it. Out loud. Somewhere. Because if I keep it inside any longer, I'll start rewriting it, softening the truth until it stops feeling real. And it was real. God, it was too real. We both knew it was wrong. But neither of us stopped. Didn't start with a kiss. It started with a glance that lasted too long. With silence that suddenly felt louder than the whole room. He was my friend's husband. Yeah, I said it. That's who he was and should have stayed. But something shifted that night. She had gone upstairs early, complaining of a migraine. I stayed behind, pretending to tidy up the kitchen after dinner. He offered to help and I should have said no. Instead I shrugged. Sure. The air was thick with unsaid things. Not words, just tension. That kind of quiet where everything feels on the verge of something. We washed dishes in silence for a while. His sleeves rolled up. Forearms veined and warm, water catching the light on his skin. I hated that I noticed. He passed me a wine glass to dry, and for a second his fingers brushed mine. Not a big deal. Not even intentional. But my whole body flinched like someone had lit a match inside me. I glanced at him. He wasn't smiling. He was just looking too long, too direct. Like he saw everything. I looked away first. But I felt his gaze still clinging to my skin. And then he said the quietest thing. Not flirtatious. Not suggestive. Just honest. I feel like you haven't breathed all night. That was it. One line. And suddenly I wasn't standing in my best friend's kitchen anymore. I was somewhere I shouldn't be. Inside a moment I couldn't unfeel. My hands were shaking. And he noticed. But neither of us stepped back. We just stood there, surrounded by the clink of dishes and the faint sound of her footsteps upstairs, pretending the air between us wasn't changing shape. I wanted to say something. Anything. But all I could do was stare at the sink, trying to stop my heartbeat from showing on my face. Because deep down we both knew this wasn't a spark. It was a fuse. And it had already been lit. I left early that night. Didn't say much. Just mumbled something about an early morning. She hugged me at the door half asleep. He stayed in the kitchen. But I felt him watching me from the hallway mirror. That quiet stare. Like a question he hadn't asked out loud yet. And I hated how badly I wanted him to. The whole drive home my chest wouldn't settle. My hands were trembling against the wheel. Not from fear. From knowing. I wasn't just imagining it. The tension. The way his eyes found mine like they were following a scent. Like we shared some terrible secret. One we hadn't said but already felt. The next few days I tried to forget it. I buried myself in work. Avoided group texts. Skipped brunch invites. But then she called. Asked if I could come over to help her with the baby shower plans. I said yes. Of course I did. And when I walked in, there he was again. Shirt untucked, hair a little messy like the universe wanted to test me twice. He smiled. Just once. And it wasn't friendly. It was quiet. Knowing. And I felt that same pull in my stomach again. Like gravity was different around him. He didn't need to touch me. The space between us ached. Later, when she left to take a call upstairs, it happened again. Not a moment. The moment. I was in the living room, flipping through fabric swatches on the couch. He walked in, leaned on the doorway. You avoiding me? He asked. I froze. Then laughed. What? No. Why would I? He stepped in. Slowly. Not touching, just close enough that I could feel his breath behind me. You're not supposed to look at me like that, I whispered. He didn't answer. Didn't move. Just stood there. So close my skin could feel him without contact. Like every nerve in my body had turned to glass. And he was the fire about to shatter it. My mouth was dry. My heart was loud. And somewhere upstairs she was laughing on the phone. That was the cruelest part. The intimacy of temptation. With someone else's voice floating down from above. But he didn't touch me. Not yet. He just leaned in. Not even close enough to kiss. But enough to make me forget what room we were in. I think about it, he murmured. I didn't ask what. Because I already knew. And I couldn't lie. So did I. I should have left. Right then. Pretended I forgot an appointment, said I wasn't feeling well. Anything. But I didn't. I stayed. Because something in me wanted to burn. I didn't move when he said it. I think about it. Just sat there, hands on my lap, fingers digging into my jeans like they could anchor me to reality. But reality had already changed, because once you cross into that kind of honesty, there's no going back to pretending. I looked up at him. His face was unreadable, calm, almost gentle. But his eyes, they told the truth. Hungry, worried, wanting. And when I finally spoke, my voice wasn't mine. It was softer, like something had cracked open. I haven't stopped thinking about it since that night. Silence. But it wasn't empty. It was thick, charged, humming electric. And then he did the smallest thing. He sat down. Not next to me, across from me on the edge of the coffee table. Close enough to touch my knees. But he didn't. He just looked at me like he was trying to memorize my face. I don't know what to do with this, I said, half laughing, half breaking. It's not supposed to be anything. It can't be. I know, he said quietly, but I don't want to lie to myself anymore. My throat tightened, because he'd said the thing I didn't have the courage to. It wasn't about the flirting. It wasn't even about the temptation. It was about being seen, noticed, wanted in a way I hadn't felt in years. And not by someone random. By him. We were quiet again. The kind of quiet that usually comes after something irreversible. But still no one moved. No kiss. No touch. Just two people too close to be innocent. Too scared to be bold. And maybe we both thought the silence would keep us safe. Like if we didn't act, it wouldn't count. But desire doesn't wait for permission. It builds. In the spaces between words. And when I stood up to leave, his hand reached out gently and caught my wrist. His thumb brushed my skin, slow and soft. Not pulling. Not stopping. Just feeling. And I swear, that one touch held more intimacy than anything I'd ever known. I looked at him, and he whispered it like a confession he'd held too long. You make it hard to be good. I drove home in silence that night. Windows down. Air cold. Music off. Like I was trying to erase something. Like wind alone could undo the way his voice felt in my chest. You make it hard to be good. I kept hearing it. And the worst part? He wasn't trying to seduce me. There was no game in his voice. No smirk. He meant it. And I hated how much that mattered to me. For days I didn't go near their house. I dodged her texts. Declined every get-together. But she was kind, always so effortlessly kind. She assumed I was just overwhelmed with work. Take care of yourself, she'd say, signing her messages with heart emojis. And I'd stare at my screen with guilt clawing its way up my throat. But guilt has a strange rhythm. It builds. It stings. And then it quiets. Not because it disappears, but because one starts speaking louder. It happened a week later. Another small gathering. Her birthday. I swore I wouldn't go. I dressed up anyway. Swore I'd just show my face, smile, and leave. But the moment I walked in and saw him, shirt slightly open at the collar, eyes already finding mine, I knew I was lying to myself again. The night blurred in laughter and wine. Candles flickered across glass. Music drifted low in the background. He barely spoke to me, but I felt him in every room. Every time I turned, he was near. Not close enough to touch, but always there. And when most of the guests had gone, she hugged me tight at the door. You're glowing tonight, she said with a smile. And I nearly shattered. He stayed behind to clean up. Of course he did. So did I. And for a while we did what we were supposed to do. Stacked plates. Collected glasses. Pretended we were just two people being polite. Until I reached for the same tray he did. And our hands touched again. This time I didn't pull away. Neither did he. I looked up. And he was already watching me. And in that breathless, horrible, beautiful second, every rational thought disappeared. 1,000 things were screaming no. But my body didn't listen. Because the way he looked at me, it wasn't lust. It was need. It was loneliness. It was the ache of everything unspoken. And when he leaned in, slow, almost shaking, I didn't move. I just closed my eyes and let the moment decide for us. His lips didn't crash into mine. They barely touched, like he was still giving me time to stop him. But I didn't. And once that space between us disappeared, so did every lie we'd been telling ourselves. It wasn't a kiss. It was a collapse. Of restraint. Of distance. of everything we tried so hard to deny. I felt his hands, unsure at first, like they didn't trust their own permission. But when I breathed in sharp shaking, he pulled me closer, slowly, carefully, as if afraid I'd break. My fingers found the fabric of his shirt, clutched, curled, desperate for something to hold on to. And for a while there were no words, just breath, just warmth, just the terrifying relief of giving in. I'd never been kissed like that, not because of how it felt, but because of how deeply it reached. Like he was trying to say everything he couldn't say out loud. And I heard all of it. The hunger, the guilt, the need to be known by someone, even if just for a moment. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested together like our bodies weren't ready to lose the contact. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but his thumb brushed my cheek like he wasn't. And maybe I should have cried. Maybe I should have run. But instead I laughed. Soft, bitter, breathless. "Don't be. We both wanted it." His eyes closed, and for a second it felt like the whole world had stopped breathing with us. I could still hear her laughter in the walls of this house, see the framed photos of them on the shelves. Her perfume hung in the air, sweet and innocent, like a ghost reminding us of everything we were risking. But still we didn't move, didn't speak. His hand rested against my lower back. Mine lingered on his chest, right over the heartbeat I could feel. Fast, unsteady, matching mine. It was wrong. We knew that. But for those few stolen minutes, it felt like the only real thing in either of our lives. And I couldn't decide what terrified me more, that it happened, or that I didn't regret it. We didn't speak of it after. Not the kiss. Not the weight of it. Not the way we both stood there afterward, pretending the room hadn't just shifted beneath our feet. He walked me to the door. Didn't touch me. Didn't ask me to stay. And when I stepped out into the night, I could still feel his breath on my skin like it was stitched into the air around me. The next day he texted me. Just one line. "We can't do that again." I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I disagreed, but because I'd written almost the exact same thing and hadn't hit send. We promised. Both of us. No more late-night texts. No more lingering stares. No more standing too close. We said all the right things. Didn't make excuses. Didn't blame the wine, the mood, the moment. We took responsibility, and then pretended like we could go back. But that kind of connection doesn't just leave. It lingers. In the way your heart stutters when you hear their voice. In the way your body still remembers their shape, even if it never truly learned it. Weeks passed. We avoided each other the way people avoid fire. Not because it isn't beautiful, but because it hurts. Still, every time I was in their house, I could feel him. Even when I didn't see him. Even when he was across the room talking to someone else. His eyes would find mine for a split second too long. She never noticed. Or maybe she didn't want to. She was glowing lately, excited about a trip they were planning, showing me photos of beach rentals. And every time she smiled, I felt something inside me shrink. Because I didn't just steal a kiss. I stole a part of someone's peace. And yet, one night I got a message. Late. Simple. "Are you awake?" I stared at it. Then I stared at myself in the mirror. Hair messy, skin bare, heart racing. I could have ignored it. I should have. But I typed back anyway. "Yeah." 3 dots. Then, "Can I call you?" And before I could stop myself, my phone lit up, and I answered. The silence on the line was thick. And then he said it, voice low and tired. "I don't know how to forget you." His voice broke something in me. Not because of the words, but because of the truth in them. "I don't know how to forget you." I didn't respond right away. I just closed my eyes, let the silence settle between us. Because I felt it too. All of it. The ache, the guilt, the pull. He wasn't asking for anything. Not directly. But the pause after his words was an invitation. And I was already halfway through the door. "Neither do I finally whispered. Another pause. Breath. Hesitation wrapped in heat. "I think about you when I shouldn't," he said. "Like when I'm driving. Or brushing my teeth. Or when she's laughing and I laugh too. But part of me still feels empty." I didn't know how to respond to that. How do you answer when someone confesses they're haunted by wanting you? Even when it's wrong. Even when it costs too much. I just said what I knew. Softly. Honestly. I miss the way you look at me. Like you see everything. That was the moment the call changed. The shift in breath. The silence that wasn't silent anymore. And I could hear it in his voice when he said it. Can I come over? I didn't think. Didn't reason. Didn't list the 1,000 reasons I should say no. I just said yes. And 20 minutes later, he was standing at my door. No one spoke. Not at first. We just stood there, looking at each other like we didn't recognize the people we were trying to be. And then, he reached for me. Not roughly. Not urgently. Just desperately. Like he'd been holding his breath since the last time, and finally needed air. His hands found my waist. Mine found his jaw. And this time, we didn't stop ourselves. We kissed like we meant to, like we needed to. He walked me backward into the room. His body pressed against mine like he couldn't stand the distance anymore. And as we moved together, clothes still on, heart still unraveling, felt less like sin, and more like surrender. Like two people drowning in the same silence, finally deciding to breathe in each other. It didn't last forever, just a few hours, but it felt like we borrowed a lifetime from some parallel world. A world where we hadn't made promises to other people. A world where wanting each other didn't come wrapped in guilt. We didn't speak much that night. Words would have ruined it, made it too real. So instead we whispered with our hands, told the truth with trembling breath. And when his forehead rested against mine, both of us still catching air like we'd run miles just to get here, I knew this wasn't just desire. It was loneliness, aching for somewhere to belong. And in that moment I belonged to him. And he, God help me, he belonged to me. But morning always comes. And with it, reality. I woke up to his jacket on the floor, his scent on my skin, and the sound of my own heartbeat reminding me that nothing about this was sustainable. He stirred beside me, eyes soft, almost sad. No regrets, but no joy either. He kissed my shoulder. And when I turned to face him, I could already feel him leaving. Not physically, but emotionally. I don't want to hurt her, he said quietly. And I nodded, as I didn't either. We didn't plan a future. Didn't pretend this was the beginning of something. We knew better. We were two people who'd fallen out of place. And for one night, found each other in the wreckage. When he left, he didn't say goodbye. Just looked at me like he was memorizing the last good thing he wasn't allowed to keep. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there wrapped in a blanket in silence, letting the weight of what we'd done settle into the room. It's been months now. We don't speak. She doesn't know. And some days I wish I could forget it all. But most days, I don't. Because for all the shame, for all the rules we broke, he made me feel seen. And in a world where we're all starving to be understood, sometimes being wanted is the only thing that feels real. We weren't just breaking rules. We were breaking ourselves, just to feel something that felt like love.